what is available in all areas is an ass-kicking for the LA Lakers. They are officially done. They are dead. They are left behind. This is over for LeBron. And at this point in time, I think the question has to be asked, what do you do going forward? The Lakers played at home against the lowly Clippers, the longtime laughingstock LA Clippers, in a must-win game for LeBron and the Lakers. And with the San Antonio Spurs on a roll, with everything moving in their direction in a negative way, with the Kings getting the win over the Knicks, both of the teams that were really kind of in the mix for the Lakers to steal a playoff win from, both in position to win. You had a chance to pick up a game on the Clippers to kind of make this a little bit of a season that could matter, and instead, the Lakers lost again. They lost at home to the lowly Clippers. And as a result, I actually think if you were buying stock right now in either the Lakers or the Clippers, Clipper stock is infinitely more valuable than Laker stock. LeBron James continues to look like he just doesn't care. He's mailed in the season. I think what's going to happen is pretty straightforward, guys. I think that they're going to pull LeBron with about 10 games left and just not play him. I really do, and hope that they somehow get insanely lucky and find a way to win the lottery. But at this point in time, with 18 games remaining in the season, and with it being very early in March, the Lakers season is dead, and the NBA has to come to grips with the fact that LeBron James is not going to be in the playoffs. And also that down the stretch of this NBA season, there's going to be no LeBron stories. There's going to be no discussion. It could get even uglier here in the near future because the Nuggets come to town tomorrow in LA. Then the Celtics, who are playing just as bad as the Lakers, come to town. And then they go on the road. And they're going to have to play at the Raptors, at the Pistons, at the Bucks. And by the time they come back off the road, I suspect that they will basically have eliminated themselves by the time the NCAA tournament is set to happen in March. And that won't even matter what happens for the final 10 or 12 games of the season. And if you consider how precipitous the decline has been, it's pretty extraordinary because on Christmas Day, the Lakers, with a win over the Warriors, were in fourth place. LeBron got hurt in that game. And to be fair, they were not very good, 6-12 when LeBron was out. But they haven't been much better since LeBron got back. And I think the line of demarcation to draw in this season was the decision to pursue Anthony Davis. Because when you go back and you write a sort of a review of the entire season, a retrospective, and you try to figure out exactly what went wrong, I think that was the moment when this team fell apart. Because it's a young team, and when LeBron effectively let it be known that he had no interest in all the young guys on this team, I think everything was fundamentally broken. And I don't think this team has ever recovered. Now, you've got a lot of older veterans that'll be gone next year, but I think fundamentally the relationship that has to be solved is between LeBron and the young guys on this team. And I think at the end of this year, the Laker franchise is just going to give it over to the young guys on this team. This will be the first time LeBron James has not made the playoffs since his second year. And the pressure on the Lakers this offseason is going to really be off the charts because everybody's going to be looking at Magic Johnson, Rob Pelinka, the Buss family, and saying you have to make some massive structural changes to this team in order to come back for next year with LeBron. And I'm just not sure what moves you can make that is suddenly going to put the Lakers in position to be anything other than a playoff hopeful again next year. Even with Anthony Davis, you'd have to give up all of the talent on your team for next year in order to get Anthony Davis. And I'm just not sure that Anthony Davis really wants to go to the Lakers right now. Are the Pelicans really in that much worse shape than the Lakers? I don't think so. The Pelicans just went on the road and won against Utah, pulled off an upset, and went on a 20-2 run with Anthony Davis on the bench. The Pelican franchise has been better in the last 20 games than the Laker franchise has. And that's despite the fact that the Pelicans got blown up too by the leaking of the story and then the public statement by Anthony Davis that he wanted to go to L.A. So I don't know what the solution is here, and I think that's the most difficult part looking forward for the Lakers. There are now 3 years left on LeBron James's contract with the Lakers. You assume that they're probably not going to make a big move in free agency in the offseason. In other words, Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving or Kawhi Leonard seem to be unlikely to come play for the Lakers, which requires them to make a big trade. The challenge with making a big trade is you'd have to give up a lot of assets in order to be able to make a trade that could give you a valuable piece to add to this team right now. But as is, this is an unmitigated disaster. And further, it is an unmitigated disaster for the NBA as well, because I've told you this for a while, guys. The NBA doesn't have a player, doesn't have a league. They've got a player. People care about LeBron James. They don't care about the NBA. And we haven't seen a season without LeBron James in the playoff since his rookie and then this sophomore campaign as a player for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's been in 8 straight NBA finals. This is like the Patriots and Tom Brady suddenly not making the playoffs. We just haven't seen this happen in so long that I don't think the NBA is prepared for the cataclysm that's going to befall their ratings for the playoffs, because they've had LeBron James as the storyline that wouldn't quit. For 8 straight years, he's gotten his team into the playoffs. The Warriors, it's hard to judge anything in the NBA regular season. The Bucks just went on the road and lost to the Suns. You had, and by the way, of course, I had the Bucks on the money line in that game, and so you have a lot of craziness that happens in the regular season of the NBA. It's hard to forecast anything, but I still feel like when the Warriors need to win, the Warriors will win. And there's the possibility, guys, if you look at the standings right now, that we could end up with Warriors against the Raptors. A Canadian team going up against a team that's won 2 straight championships and has no real challengers. Maybe the Western Conference playoffs are going to turn into an incredibly engaging series of playoff games. And maybe the same thing is going to happen in the Eastern Conference, where it seems to be wide open. But the nation as a whole doesn't react to the Milwaukee Bucks going up against the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals. Nobody watches that. The nation reacts to stars, and I just don't believe that the NBA is remotely prepared for a LeBron-less existence. Danny G, this is your opportunity. Are you officially willing to pronounce the Laker playoff hopes as dead?
Clay, the Lakers are not mathematically out of it.
I'm not even going to ask you about the Lakers anymore.
Well, that's good, because you're only supposed to talk about LeBron for 3 minutes each morning on your show.
Well, I didn't think that we'd be putting burying the Lakers season on March 3rd or whatever the heck date it is, March 5th. I don't even know what day it is, but I didn't think it certainly would happen this early in the year. I didn't think the Lakers were going to be that good. I thought they would lose in the first round of the playoffs, probably.
Yeah.
But I never thought that they would be effectively dead. There are 18 games left, and they are now 5.5 games out of the playoffs. So, I mean, to kind of put it into perspective, they would need to go probably on like a 15-3 hot streak to close. And even then, it might not be good enough at 15-3 to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's how far back they are now.
And that's not likely because of the strength of schedule. They have the 7th hardest schedule to end the season, so that was another uphill battle there. So, yeah, Laker fans are just looking forward to next season. The offseason is going to be huge for Magic and Pelinka, because they need some really good spot-up three-point shooters. They need some length. You saw how small they looked without Brandon Ingram on the floor last night. So there are a lot of holes to fill on that roster.
They're actually, by the way, 6 games out, because I remember Dub pointing out, assuming Dub's
that half
correct.
game.
Yeah, that they lose the tiebreak with the Spurs, who are right now the number 8 overall seed.
Yeah.
And so as a result, they're 6 games out with 18 to play. That's almost impossible to catch.
There was a lot of hopefulness, and you heard the crowd kind of holding their breath last night at Staples Center. But most Laker fans and a lot of NBA fans who are reasonable, after that Bucks loss last week, it felt over. It really did, because when you're leading the best team in the East by that many points and then you collapse at the very end of the game, and then what happened after that with a bad hangover in Phoenix, it felt over right there. So, yeah, you got to figure out what to do during the offseason at this point.
We're going to talk with Chris Mannix next, right? We'll see what he anticipates the story being in the NBA as we go forward. This is an unmitigated disaster, Chris Mannix. How bad is it for the Lakers, and where do they go from here?
Well, they go home, basically. I mean, that's the short-term answer to the question. And then long-term, they have to hope that the pieces they have are enough to acquire Anthony Davis, because I just, look, the free agent market, I don't believe is going to be robust for the Lakers. If you look down the list of the top-tier guys, none of them really have the Lakers at the top of their list. And there are multiple reasons for that, but the Lakers, I don't think they stand much of a chance, outside of maybe overpaying for Jimmy Butler, of landing a top-tier guy. And the idea that they could bring all these guys back after the way this season kind of cratered on them, and what these guys clearly think of what happened, with LeBron and his agent and Anthony Davis and all that happened in the month of February, I just don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. So I think they're in a real bad place, both short term and long term, if they can't shake this thing up.
Even long term, all right, like this, we can finally turn the page and say they're not going to make the playoffs here. Do you think they'd pull LeBron at some point and just say, okay, like, we're putting him on ice for the rest of the season?
I think it's possible. I think LeBron would probably push back on that, just because I think he wants, if for no other reason, the number of games to be as high as they can possibly be. I don't think he'll voluntarily take himself out of the lineup, but I would probably do that. I mean, there's nothing more to gain at this point. It really is. It's really remarkable if the Clippers are going to hold on to this. I mean, the Clippers engaged in, and I don't think it was wrong, but their front office tried to tank. I mean, they traded Tobias Harris, and we all know the reason. Like, they missed the playoffs, and the Celtics get that. They keep that draft pick. They make the playoffs. The Celtics get that draft pick. So they didn't want to make the postseason. Nothing to gain for them by going into the playoffs and wiped out by Golden State in the first round. But the mental toughness that this team and the Clippers has shown, and the coaching job that Doc Rivers, who no longer wears the president's hat, has done, is really incredible. Meanwhile, the Lakers, who had a wide-open opportunity, a golden opportunity to leapfrog, the woe-begone Sacramento Kings and a Clipper team that doesn't want to be there, and just to see them kind of cave speaks volumes about where this team is at, mentally, and not being able to kind of overcome adversity and get to where they want to be.
Anthony Davis said he wanted to go to the Lakers because he was frustrated with the Pelicans' inability to win. The Pelicans are now 1 game behind the Lakers. Why in the world would Anthony Davis, if you're being rational, want to lock himself to LeBron James, what appears to be a declining asset, and even scarier for Laker fans? Do Anthony Davis and LeBron James really fit that well together? Is that a duo that can contend? Maybe they can make the playoffs with that duo, maybe. But is that really a duo that can contend for a championship?
Yeah, I think no, alone, no. They would need help, absolutely, to get there. I think for Anthony Davis, though, the idea is that it's probably easier to lure top-tier guys to Los Angeles than it is to New Orleans. And if you have, let's say 3 years of reasonably high-level LeBron James left, you might be able to get somebody in 2020. You might be able to make a deal that brings in somebody else. It's just easier to put together a top-tier team in LA. But there's no question he's got to be watching what's unfolding out there and wondering, what's best for my future. And maybe in the coming, weeks and months, we see that list of Anthony Davis's, which has always been a fluid one. Started out with the Lakers, then it was the Lakers and Clippers, and then it's the Milwaukee Bucks are on that list. All of a sudden, Boston was there all along. I think we might see Anthony Davis expand that list even further with the way the Lakers have imploded. Because you're right, at some point, Anthony Davis is going to find himself, marooned in LA with a very much deteriorated LeBron and maybe nobody else around him.
Laker fans chanting, "We want Kobe," as LeBron James is taking free throws. This could turn ugly, and maybe already has turned ugly for LeBron in LA, because there's no reason why Laker fans believe in LeBron James the same way that Heat fans could, who without much of a history in Miami of great basketball. And certainly that's not the same way that Cavs fans did, where they have almost no history of winning championship-level basketball games without LeBron James. The Lakers are a storied franchise. I don't want to say it's going to turn into Juwan Howard with the Wizards, but at some point, and maybe it's already happened, the Laker faithful can turn on LeBron James, and this can become ugly. Do you think that happens?
Well, I'd first remind Laker fans that the last few years of Kobe weren't very good either. I know he had far more equity with that team because of what he accomplished, but the Kobe's contract and all the fallout from it are part of the reason the Lakers are here right now and the mess that they're in. But this has been disappointing because I think Lakers and the Lakers and the fans there probably expected to make the playoffs and probably expected to have some upward momentum going into next season. Whether that means one of those core young players looking like a backbone piece of the franchise, whether that means Luke Walton establishing himself as the coach of the future. I think if the Lakers make the playoffs, I don't know how Jeannie Buss can protect Luke Walton from all the forces that are going to try to replace him. But none of those things have happened this season. All they've gotten was a LeBron James who suffered his first major injury, who doesn't play any defense whatsoever, who misses key free throws in key moments and multiple occasions, not just the one most recently. And it's got to be disheartening. So I think that this year can be quickly forgotten if they pick up next year. But if next year starts out looking like this one, I'm with you. I think that the backlash against LeBron could be pretty fast.
We're talking to Chris Mannix. What happens if Anthony Davis gets traded somewhere else?
I don't know what they do or what they can do. There are things that happen all the time where a star becomes available that we didn't know. So you kind of cross your fingers, and if you're the Lakers, hope that happens and that somebody out there wants their combination of Ingram, Kuzma, Lonzo Ball, draft picks, whatever it is. But right now, that star just isn't out there, and I don't see which one of them is going to become available in the next 6 to 8 months. So they might wind up having to kind of nip along the edges, maybe make a smaller deal that gets them somebody, maybe just change the chemistry within the locker room. Remember, they also have a bunch of one-year guys that are out there. They're going to have to overhaul this roster again, regardless of what happens with Anthony Davis. So they could wind up coming back with the same core guys, but another crop of 4, 5, 6 players like Rondo, Stevenson, JaVale McGee types that are incorporated into this mix. And I don't know how that's going to work for this team. One of the bigger problems with this group has been that they've been constructed at least partly of mercenaries. You don't have guys that have equity within this team. And without that, it's really hard to get guys to band together during the tough times and fight for championships.
Is the NBA prepared for a LeBron-less playoffs?
Their rating is going to be just awful, especially in that first round. Can you imagine? Clippers Warriors versus Clippers Lakers. That's the difference between primetime, ESPN and primetime NBA TV. That's really what it is. So I think you're going to see what's already been a downward trend, and we've talked about this before, but what's already been a downward trend in the rating. It's going to continue into the playoffs, especially since I think everybody's kind of numb to the Golden State effect, and you can sell fans on somewhat on the regular season, But when you get into the playoffs, it's really hard to convince anybody that it's anybody but Golden State going there. And if you wind up with Golden State versus Toronto or Golden State versus Milwaukee, you could see some of the worst ratings we've ever seen in the league.
What's going to happen in the East?
I don't think seeding matters. I really don't. And I say that because there really isn't a boogeyman there. I mean, Milwaukee's the top team, and they're great, but you don't have to throw a rock too far to find somebody in the NBA that wonders aloud if Milwaukee's just this really good regular season team that might not be built for the playoffs. I mean, the question is about how long can you play Brook Lopez in the postseason, and the lack of playoff experience around Giannis. Eric Bledsoe flamed out last year in the postseason. Meanwhile, Boston, people still look at the Celtics and say if they can ever, over the last 5, 6, 7 games, figure out their monster chemistry issues, that they can still be a team that can make a run from even the 5-seed slot. So I'm really interested, Clay, in seeing which of these teams, starts to get some momentum going into the playoffs, because regardless of where these teams are seated, I think anyone is capable of winning on the other team's home floor. So the East playoffs in a vacuum, I think, going to be really entertaining, because I think there are probably 4 teams. I'll exclude Indiana because at some point they already have started to come back down to earth. But at some point they'll fall off. But the other 4 teams at the top, I think any one of those teams can win.
We're talking to Chris Mannix. I want to go back to the Lakers again. If LeBron James had known what the first 64 games were going to be like, if he had known they were going to be sitting at 30 and 34, where would he have gone instead? Or do you think he still would have gone to the Lakers?
He still would have. I mean, this decision, and as we know, it wasn't made just for basketball reasons. I mean, he made the Miami decision to team up with those guys for basketball reasons. He made the Cavs decision because of how they were equipped for basketball reasons, but also to be part of Northeast Ohio. And this was as much about his own personal brand and his future as it was making a decision. He's not been shy about saying that either. His people around him have said this is a decision about him. So I don't think it would have changed. I think he's got to be astonished at the way this season has gone downhill and his inability to kind of will a team forward that he had in Cleveland. That's just not there. And he hasn't had the same impact on players like Ingram and Kuzma and Ball. Lonzo's been out for a while, but a couple of other guys, as he did on like J.R. Smith and George Hill and Kevin Love. And I think that's got to be surprising to him. But I still don't believe he would have made any different decision.
I come back around, and Chris, we're talking about the overall impact of LeBron on the league. 8 straight finals trips, the fact that even with the dynasty that exists with Golden State, there's this possibility lingering around out there that LeBron could, kind of be at least on the stage with them in a star turn. I have been arguing for a while that the NBA in a post-LeBron era, and I feel like we're kind of getting a preview for what that might be like, regardless of what he does in the next couple of years with the Lakers. Is the league prepared for a LeBron-less existence, or do you think this is going to be, and I know you're young, you're not that much different in age than me, but when Jordan left the NBA, it took the NBA a very long time to build back up to anything, and really it was LeBron coming back that brought the NBA back to prominence. And uniquely among all the major American sports leagues, I think the NBA is a star-driven league. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that can be awful if the stars aren't playing well or if the stars are coming down the tail end of their career. Is the NBA prepared for a LeBron-less existence even beyond not making the playoffs?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't know if I really know the answer. I mean, the league was really lucky that within a handful of years, they were able to transition from the end of the Jordan era, and let's call it the real end of the Jordan era, the 90s with the Bulls, to where LeBron came into the league in 2003. And I remember that transition there. I mean, Kobe was coming into his own, but it was Allen Iverson's league at that time. It was Tim Duncan's league at that time, and neither one of those players had the ability to kind of seize the mantle and take over. Now, there certainly are some very appealing stars in this league. I mean, Steph Curry is still an appealing star. Giannis, I think the sky's the limit for his popularity, especially if his team starts to win, as they look equipped to win right now. But I think what could save the league from that type of drop-off is the establishment of kind of NFL-style parity. And you remember when Michael went out of the league in the end of the 90s, it opened the door for that Lakers, Shaq, and Kobe team to kind of take over and and become the dominant group, there's a possibility, a strong possibility really, that once Kevin Durant, if he leaves Golden State, all of a sudden you could have an NFL-level parity the league hasn't seen in a really long time. I mean, they've been a league of dynasties for as long as I can remember, going back to the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. I mean, there's been teams that rattle off 3-4 championships. Now, Kevin Durant moves, all of a sudden you've got, 5 teams in the Eastern Conference that go into the playoffs every year thinking they can win a championship, 6 teams in the West that think they can win a championship. I think the competitiveness of the league is the only thing that could really help it. If there's a team like Milwaukee, let's say, that emerges, even with Giannis, that emerges as the next dynasty in this league, I think the ratings really will suffer. They need, a bunch of 7-game series with top-tier teams with stars to salvage the post-LeBron era.
Last question for you. Adam Silver, really eye-opening conversation with Bill Simmons at the Sloan Sports Conference. I don't know if you were there. I'm sure you've watched some of it, or if not all of it. What's the reaction in the league to Silver talking about? You hear so much about, the NBA is such a social league. Oh, it's fantastic how active the players are on Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else out there. And then you hear the commissioner say these guys aren't happy, and he attributes a decent amount of it to social media. What's the reaction in league circles to the commissioner's comments?
It was really interesting, and I hadn't talked to too many people, but a couple of executives had texted me when I had, texted those comments to them, and they just basically said they agree that these players are I don't know what the wording would be for it, but they're certainly not as social and connected to their teams as players in previous years were. Now, these executives I talked to don't know if they would blame it on social media necessarily. It's also the fact that guys are kind of promoting their own brands and are doing a lot of things individually, with sneaker deals and off-court appearances. But the idea that guys get on the bus, they put on their headphones, and they don't connect to their teams, and there is kind of this loneliness, is true. It's real across the league. I mean, it got me thinking too, Clay. I don't know how many stories I have of, in the last 10 years of, guys banding together, getting together for dinners on the road, coming together as a team while they're on the road. I mean, it just doesn't happen as much anymore anecdotally. So when Adam Silver said that, and he's clearly seen it on a firsthand level more than I have, it definitely resonated. It resonated with a lot of people that I talked to as well.
Outstanding stuff as always, Chris. Where can people find your work? I got asked this question the other day. If people want to track down everything that you're doing, they can obviously follow you on Twitter. You can give that out. But also, where can they read you?
Yeah, just on Twitter at SI Chris Mannix, and all my stuff's over at SI.com.
Outstanding stuff as always, my man. I appreciate you getting up early with us.
You got it, Clay.